Morning everyone, Vin here from No Nonsense Whiskey. A little bit of a different video today. I am on my holidays in the lovely Welsh countryside, and while I am down here I figured I was near to the Welsh Wind Distillery, so I'm going to go over there and see what they've got going on. I put out on Twitter recently something about ice stills. I'm interested in ice stills and people that are making whiskey in ice stills, and of course these guys have they've not got any kind of matured spirits, let's say, yet, so I'm going to go down there and have a look at their ice stills and see what's occurring with those, and just check out the distillery itself. A brand new, relatively Welsh distillery. It's a very up and coming market. There's a couple of whiskies that are in the market now for Wales, not just Penderyn. There's a couple more as well, but I'll get into those another day when I do some actual reviews. In any case, I've got about an hour's drive on me now, so I'll see you when we get there. Okay, here we are at the Welsh Wind Distillery. Nipped over here while I'm on my holiday actually, but yeah, so we're going to go inside, we're going to see what they're working on. They've got some ice stills, so we're going to talk about that a little bit, and we'll talk about some casks. And if you're interested in Welsh Wind or Welsh distilleries or Welsh whisky and whatnot, it's all very fascinating stuff. Hopefully you'll enjoy the video. Catch you again. Okay, so I'm in the barrel house now. So over here, well, it's everything house, a whiskey room really. We've got some ice stills over here, which we'll go into in a bit. And over here we've got some barrels, which are 30-litre casks, and it's got their kind of green whiskey that's going in it. So it's all done. I'll go into the process in a little bit, but the main thing to know about this is it's only 6 months old, and they've kind of let me just go straight into it. It's 50%. It's a shaved and toasted and then recoopered, so although that's STR, it's not STR in the way you think, which is shaved, toasted, recharred. Not been recharred, it's just the toasted. And hopefully we've got some good stuff in here, so let's have a go. Got my old pipette here, and then we're going to do this all very hand-driven while holding the camera. I can't believe they've left me alone to do this. Oh, spillage. All hands on deck. Perfect. Let's leave that to rest. So obviously this is all going to be natural colour. They've got a really interesting process here. So behind me, which is probably going to get blown out a little bit here. They're doing all their floor maltings here. The barley is grown very, very locally, and it's all been kind of malted here. Then they, not fully malted like you would expect, but then they kind of go into the ice stills for their entire kind of like fermentation and the single distillation technically. But let's have a look at this and see what we've got, shall we? Oh, wow, okay. Now, although it's about 50 odd percent, they said it's been barreled at about sort of 60 something percent. It's very light, very floral. Isn't as malty as you would expect, but that's because they don't follow the kind of traditional process, let's say. They're doing their own thing here, so it's not really like, you know, they don't kind of like, you know, grind it up and create your grist and whatnot, so you're not getting those traditional flavours that you would expect from Scotch. But then, why would you want it? You know, you're a Welsh distillery in Wales, why not make it your own way? Let's have a wee taste. Wow, okay. I mean, it's yeah, that is good, that is good. I have a little moment with myself. For 6 months old, in one of these 30 litres, I can only imagine what this is going to be like. You can, skipping ahead a bit, you can buy these casks. I think they're selling these for about 1,500 with new make in them, and then you age them for your 3 years, whatever. If this is only 6 months old, I can only imagine what it's going to be like when it's 3 years. But this is like, it's familiar, but different enough to be interesting. Lots of really oaky character. The kind of lack of maltiness kind of gives it a more aged effect, let's say. I'm going to try it with a little bit of water as well, see what we've got. Let's use that pipette again. Just a wee drip. Oh, that's really brought out some extra. I mean, you can really tell the alcohol level on this now. But for me, that's really lovely. I do love my high ABV stuff. Wow, I mean, genuinely, this is my first taste of this on camera. Very impressed, very impressed. Okay, well, I probably didn't do it very good justice, so I'm going to hand over to Alex, who works here, who's going to talk us through the entire process and what they're doing.
So, starting with growing our barley, 4 varieties actually that we grew in 2020, so we can work out at small scale, you know, do we like the flavour? But of course, you know, starting something like this, the barley probably doesn't have the right nitrogen or protein level, but in working with it, we actually feel like we're capturing an essence of what it means to make whiskey in Wales. So for some, that would be the concept of terroir, which would be in grapes and wine predominantly. Speaking of a flavour profile that would come from being, you know, grown, in our case, barley from the coast or barley from, clay-rich soil further inland here in Wales. But all of that leads us to our process. So our grain, dried to reasonably low moisture, and our farmer luckily does that bit for us. We then germinate it, so we malt it either on our malting table or directly on the floor here, and we process it without kilning it. So in the kilning, I suppose you could call it diastatically challenging the alpha and beta amylase. So our green grain is rich and ripe, and those chained together starch during that process are being converted to 2 glucose molecules, or the availability of glucose, and we go ahead and we mash in with it straight away. So split mashing temperatures, and for us, we're using a piece of equipment that allows us really precise temperature control. We're mashing in at 65, lifting that temperature to 75, and then we're making a sweet wort then, but it's a green grain, a green mashing. So the flavour profile we're getting isn't biscuity, toasty, Christmas cakey. We're getting Gallia melon, just a touch of hay, fresh cut grass, and a deep yellow sultana flavour, raisin cake, I would describe it more as. But look, while I'm doing that, I'm going to pull some out of the barrel now. This is 6-month-old green grain spirit, so you know we're not able to call this whiskey, but I think, as you can see now, we're already getting that straw colour in the liquid, and at 6 months, that's what I get. Imagine a big fat juicy yellow sultana, and there's no hint of the Maillard reaction here, which we'd be getting from kilned grain. Of course, there's no peat. Not a sustainable peating industry here in Wales, so it's, you know, not something that we'll be pursuing. But already, I'd say 55% in cask, maybe a little bit higher. It went in at 62 or 63.5. And that aroma, I can imagine, over its 3-year maturation in these smaller barrels, is going to give us a deep golden. I don't think it will get into the browns, because this isn't a charred cask. It's a shaved, toasted and recoopered barrel, and emphasis on the toasting there. That this stave, you can see, this is a toasted barrel. If it was a heavily charred barrel, it would look like an alligator's back, you know, with these big ferrules of charcoal. So not into the browns, but a deep golden colour to be given. And from the cask, so already that yellow sultana, summer hay, meadow hay, but the flavour profile's really ringing. It's sweet and just a little bit of a touch of that white candle wax. So it's mouth coating already, but with a little bit of water. Not too much, of course. Don't shout at me. But for the purposes of determining a flavour, and look, I'm swirling the glass and everything here, but oh yeah, you know, we're getting individual characteristics. I really get the grain with this. And it's not like a cheesecake base or something that's had that sort of cooking process. It really is that fresh grain, pungent with, you know, I suppose what you could call a harvest aroma. And just dropping it down to a much lower ABV there. Oh, that's just filling the mouth. And again, bright, clean, yes. Young in the cask, yes. Small barrels. But in a small business like this, if you're not taking advantage, and experimenting and doing things slightly different, you'd be missing a huge opportunity.
These barrels here, you said that these are the 30-litre ones.
Yes.
So you're doing these 200-litre one as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're casking in a variety of barrels from 30s, 50s, or I suppose you could call that a quarter cask. A 200 is really well suited to us leaving the spirit in there for 5-6 years. We're certainly not going to be driven by creating age statement liquids, but we've got a variety. Burgundy region Pinot Noir, 18-month maturation. We were lucky enough to get for a rum project a Cotswold barrel and Bundaberg, something from Barbados. We've got our own virgin oak, European oak. These are heavily charred. That's for a project that will see us making a spirit closer to a bourbon, but looking for some Welsh affiliation, to drive that project forward. But if we can find the barrels, we're interested in using them. And one of our favourites is the Paolo Cattardo. We were talking earlier about happy accidents. Well, Paolo Cattardo sherry translates as a cross on the cask, and it's a failed Fino or Amontillado sherry. And then it needs to be fortified with spirit and left to mature, finish its maturation oxidatively. So the Paolo Cattardo gives hints of carob chocolate, much more acidity, that beautiful dry mouth feeling. And the inspiration from that came from a only available in distillery Bunnahabhain art, and that was a mind blowing experience for me. We recently put one of our gins into a Paolo Cattardo barrel, and we're lucky enough to scoop up a Gin Masters, and that's a really good indication of people appreciating and understanding these really unusual small caskings, great flavours, limited bottle runs, and it sounds like that's something you're super interested in as well,
Yeah, Sally sort of mentioned to me out the front there that you've done something like 45 different gins.
Yeah, we've been producing gins and spirits for some other businesses, and actually as a providing financial stability, that's been awesome. But also, we're making for interesting people and coming up with these creative ideas, not only in process, production, what botanicals we might use, but it's led us into being able to help out some other brands with their whiskey production. We're currently making an incredible 100% rye with a fantastic company called Mercia Whiskey.
We know them.
Those guys have been down in the distillery with us, suggesting to us, they want to do this 100% rye, and the R&D for that has put us into deglucanization of a very sticky rye. And people at this stage probably won't know, but we do everything in a single unit. So we're mashing, fermenting, and distilling on the grain using an agitator. So all of a sudden, 100% rye whiskey goes into a different realm. If we're talking about those phenolic, pinene, limonene qualities, the spice that can come from rye, imagine that tenfold, because the level of extraction by mashing, fermenting, and distilling on the grain really gives something. Really does give something super.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that quick look at the Welsh Whisky Distillery over in Wales. Definitely something worth checking out. As I was leaving, they were kind enough to hand me a wee sample of their new make spirit, which really nice to try. It's made exclusively with estate grain green malted barley, which we went into a little bit in the video. Now this has been kind of reduced down to 40%, which is absolutely fine. Usually a new make would be something like sort of 63, something like that. So it's been brought down to a palatable thing, and obviously it's clear as it comes, because that's what new make is. Hasn't touched the barrel. But I thought I would finish this video off with a little look at the new make, and hopefully get you interested in checking out the Welsh Wind. Make sure you go and check out their social media platforms and whatnot. Let's have a little nose on this new make spirit and see what we've got. Oh, wow. I've tried some new make in my time. I've covered some on the channel, but I wasn't expecting it to be so flavourful when I saw that it was 40%. Now it's full of the malty aspect that you would, you would think to get. You know, it's very similar to other new make spirits that I've smelt. At least I haven't tried this one yet. Genuinely, my first sip coming up in a moment. But it's got this little extra interest to it. It's almost like an actual chocolatey biscuit vibe to it that you don't typically get on most new makes. Like you're normally talking about some kind of like hay, maltiness, whatever. But obviously because this is a different kind, this is like green barley instead of like the full-on malted, it's ever so slightly different. Let's have a little sip and see what we get. Interesting. Now, because it's not that 60%, because it's been brought down to that 40, it's allowing a lot more of those flavours to develop and bring out some extra hints of stuff in it. But there's a lot to pick through, so let's have another quick sip. Now, again, it's leading with those hay notes, those malty notes that is characteristic of a lot of new makes, but it's got that extra, again, that kind of like chocolatey vibe that's going through this that I don't typically get off new make spirits. Extremely light, extremely floral, but sweet, and even at 40%, it's got a really nice mouthfeel to it. Now, you saw in the video, after only sort of 6 months or so in those small 30-litre barrels, this spirit is really shining already, I think. And I, for one, very impressed in what they're doing right down there. And I definitely keeping an eye on them. And all I can say is for you guys to keep an eye on them too. I have no idea what they're going to be doing going forwards, whether they're going to release some of this for everyone to try, or if they're going to be putting some stuff out anytime soon. But what I can tell you is they won't be selling things until it's ready. And when it is ready, it's going to be quality. You know, the people that are working there are enthusiastic. They're kind of like got a real keen eye on the quality. So this isn't an operation that's just in it to make some money. Obviously, money needs to be made, of course, but they're in it to make some excellent quality spirit and a unique spirit at that. You know, they're not interested in creating anything like Scotch at all. You know, one of the things that I was put onto them in the first place was because they're using this ice still, which we talked a little bit about in the video. And I was not concerned, let's say, but I was very interested in how this ice still was comparing to traditional double distillation in a copper pot still. And I have to say, having been down there and tried the spirit and now this, I am not quote-unquote concerned anymore. I think it's an excellent thing to be doing in tandem with the current state of whiskey. And I'm definitely 100% interested in what they're going to be producing going forwards. And the minute they have some actual whiskey to sell or have available, I'm going to be getting it and reviewing it so that you guys can see it. Hopefully you'll be buying some soon. If that's got you interested, make sure you go and check them out on social medias and whatnot, because I definitely think they're someone to keep an eye on. And yeah, keep an eye on this channel for more Welsh Wind.